USA! 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 USA!
For 4 years we have witnessed turmoil in America, but nothing quite like this. We followed the aggrieved and infuriated Trump supporters as they stormed the building.
I swear that's CNN, and they just said these guys.
Through broken windows and doors they had forced open.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Do you think Islam is at war with the West?
I think Islam hates us. There's something there there's a tremendous hatred there. There's a tremendous hatred. We have to get to the bottom of it. We are also taking strong measures to protect our nation from radical Islamic terrorism.
It definitely is very worrying, that's for sure. I still have a lot of colleagues that were working on the Hill that saw a lot of these events, and it's very jarring for them that lived through it and for us as spectators. With that being said, there's always this kernel of hope that you have to cling to, and if you don't see the change that you want, then you should be the impetus for the change that you want to see.
Growing up here in America as a Muslim, it's that here and there there'll be a terrorist joke, or here or there there'll be a bomb joke at school, or maybe at the workplace or something, or per se there's a holistic view that Muslims are just violent people, radicalized people that basically, I guess, stereotype will just say walk into a building and just open their jacket, you know, whatever happens. And generally it's sad because that's not the reality of it. And despite that being not the reality, people who are, I guess you could say, ignorant, or will take that false reality for real, will proudly claim it and, you know, go against anything that you say because you're a Muslim.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups, and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
willing to do
specifically
that, but
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
In terms of these presidents that, you know, America elects, if I'm being personally honest, I don't root for any particular party. I'm not a big fan of, I guess, either candidate, because at the end of the day, from like the trend that I've been seeing, whether the candidate is Republican or Democrat, the same thing still applies. They're going to be occupying countries in the Middle East. Afghanistan, for example, America's still within Afghanistan trying to solve an unending problem. And I believe they're part of the problem. And so when you see that these presidents like promise different things, the agenda is still the same looking back at home. And me as an Afghan, I wouldn't want my country to be bombed, or for that matter, any Muslim country or any country at all, for that matter.
My family, we used to live in Texas, and I was very young, but you know, I did hear from my parents, you know, later on, they told me like some people would give them a hard time for you know, my mother wearing hijab or chadar, as well as my father, who you know, brown skin and, you know, foreign name. They did have some troubles after Donald Trump's campaign and presidency. You know, the new wave of kind of racism it is worrying, but at the same time, I feel like I've seen a really good positive reaction from a lot of different communities, from African Americans, from the Latino and Hispanic community, from Muslim communities. They've organized really well. They've come to speak out against they've come to speak out against racism, and I think in a way that I think has been productive. So, even though that element of increasing racism is there, I think it's being dealt with.
A lot of times people highlight on the Trump versus Biden elections and the rise of the Trump family and everything, but an important fact is that the congressional elections have brought more hope, in a sense, that more diverse members of America can be represented in Congress. I mean, Ilhan Omar is a great example. She has proven that a Muslim lady wearing a scarf can represent in Congress, which is something that a lot of people don't see. She can represent her people's beliefs, her ideals, her state's importance, and the things that she wants to address in Congress. And I think that's something that a lot of people are looking forward to see a lot of other diverse groups getting into Congress.
We are lucky in the sense that we live in a community, we live in an area that's generally a lot more diverse than the rest of America. So nothing directly, but sort of during my studies so I'm interested in politics as a career field. So when I venture out into the professional world, I do feel a sense of uncomfortability, if that makes sense. So when I'm in these professional circles or these policy circles, these political circles, I do feel like with certain folks that hold certain political view, they might not, I guess, mesh well with someone like me. So it's nothing direct, but these all like these implicit things that you can notice on a daily basis, but you can't really pinpoint and say, oh, this happened, and that like sort of face a challenge, or that's an Islamophobic event that happened to me. I remember I interned in the Senate, in Congress, for a year, and I felt so out of place. All the folks that were there were these private school Ivy Leaguers, like gajillion-dollar households, and I felt super out of place. But thankfully, by networking and talking to more and more people, I was able to find sort of a niche group of other Muslims, other Arabs that worked on Capitol Hill as well. So I really aligned myself as close as I can with them. But it was difficult for, I stayed there for a year, and most of that, like 8 months, I was pretty much talking to nobody. But then thankfully when I was able to find this Middle Eastern group of folks, that's when I sort of felt at home. Initially, just like any other Middle Eastern household, my parents gave me 3 options. They said doctor, engineer, or lawyer. And I said no, no, and no. I really wasn't interested in medicine. That's what they were pushing for the most, and I really wasn't interested in that. I didn't have the passion for it. And then I sat between me and myself to reflect and think, what is it that I want to accomplish at the end of the day? And I thought back to all the youth sessions that we had with Shia Muslim in the center, and his advice was, whatever you choose, always be the best at it, to be a sort of a representation of what a Shia Muslim can achieve. So I thought about that more and more, and then I noticed that the political world, the policymaking world, has a dearth of Muslim representation, and more specifically Shia Muslim representation. So that sort of sparked the idea in my head. And then as I studied it more and more, I thought to myself, well, everyone says, oh, I want to save the world, right? I want to change the world. We live in a rules-based society, and the only way to change the world, to do whatever you want to do, to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish, is by changing laws. So I thought policy and politics would be the most natural way to change laws, and I'll figure it out sort of from there. But that's how I chose it. The overall grand vision is to sort of be a bridge between Iraq and the Iraqi community, whether it be here or in Iraq, and the U.S. So going back to the personality is mixing that Americanness and the Iraqiness to help my Iraqi community back home. That's the ultimate goal.
I think of it pretty straightforward. I am Pakistani American. I really, other than my grandparents, you know, and the food we eat and, you know, the language we speak, I don't feel very culturally connected to Pakistan. You know, and on the other side of that is growing up American, you know, watching American TV, having, you know, in this area, the Northern Virginia area, having friends from many different parts of the world. You know, you know, my interests and things like that, I do feel very American, and Pakistan, my Pakistani identity kind of takes a backseat to that because, again, I didn't grow up very connected. It is kind of corny to say, but like with religious freedoms and, you know, things like that in this country, that I've been able to learn about Shiism, you know, embrace the culture of Shiism, you know, ask questions, be critical of religion in a way that maybe in the Middle East or something, you know, is not welcome. They say like being a Shia is like a minority within a minority. So, you know, the first things is that we know we're Muslim, and you know that brings about its own set of unique challenges. And then you really come to appreciate that when, you know, being Shia comes with another set of challenges.
I perceive myself first and foremost as a Shia individual before my American identity. And I think that's mainly because at the end of the day, when we pass away, the angels in the grave are not going to be asking you, what's your nationality? Where were you from? What cultures do you inhibit? In all these different questions, they're going to be asking you rather, who's your God? Who's your prophet? Who are your imams? These fundamental questions. And I think from this basis, I'm able to develop my Shia identity and develop this as my first priority. And from then, there, I can grow my other forms of identity, like being a daughter, being a sister, being even a student in school. I don't really see myself as two different entities. I see myself as an Afghan American. I love the food and culture that comes from my Afghan heritage. And I also embrace the American that I get from this land, its independence, its freedom, the ability to practice my religion, which is not offered in a lot of other countries.
In terms of where my identity clashes as an Afghan born here in America, I firstly identify as Afghan. If anyone, I guess, walked up to me on the street and asked, where are you from, I'm not going to start off with I'm Afghan American. I'm going to just say I'm Afghan. And for me personally, it truly boils down to, I guess, how my experience was growing up here in America, with the culture being so different from how it was in my home. Because in my home, coming from a Shia Afghan family, the environment is totally different on the outside world. People have different views, different ethics, different ways of life. So when it came to grasping who I was in my identity, I always considered myself Afghan above all else, because I didn't really fit in with the American culture. At least I am adapted to it now, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself full-blooded and born, American. How difficult is it to be a Muslim in this society? I think I have to start off this question with me growing up Muslim in America. It was a game of adaptation. Going in the lunch line, you saw all these kids would get, I guess, dishes with meat or whatever, not necessarily halal. Half my diet, you could say, eating outside is either vegetarian or pescatarian, either fish or, veggies. In America, there, you could say, is a majority of Christian population, and even if there is a growing Muslim population, it's Sunni. There was always a disconnect for me, because I'd be like, oh, why do you guys do this? Christmas, what's the meaning behind Christmas? Why don't I ever, celebrate something as Christmas growing up? Because these weren't in my understanding or even in my religious education. And even when there were other Muslims, say, in the institutes that I grew up in, like school per se, like sports teams and stuff like that, there was also a disconnect there. I'm like, why do you guys have 2 Eids and I have 3 Eids? Why do you guys break your fast earlier than me? Oh, blah, blah, blah. This, that, these are my icons, these are your icons per se. There was always a disconnect, but then that just pushed me further as a Muslim in America to learn more about my identity and why I hold on to it, and that was the best thing that came out of it personally.
Has been around, I think, for 15 plus years. It serves the community for the wider metro area. That includes Afghan community, the Iranian community, Pakistani community, and the Arab community as a whole as well. When I came to the US about 10 years ago, that's when my dad heard about the center, and we came. I think it was like the first center that we came to our first month here. What initially attracted me was the resident scholar here was Sheikh Mustafa Akhund. He would do these weekly youth sessions, and that's what attracted me to the center and honestly made me more religious.
I am the resident alim of Imam Ali Center since 2012, and alhamdulillah, I have the honor of serving this amazing community. In year 2000, Ayatollah Sayyid Murtaza Shirazi arrived to the United States of America, and they established Al-Rasul Islamic Center. The center was very small. It could hold only about 200 people. But alhamdulillah, within a year and a half, 2 years, the community grew, and they saw that they have to buy and purchase a new center. And in the year 2004, Imam Ali Center was purchased. It took about 2-3 years for the remodeling and the construction, and to establish as many halls as possible, classrooms, and to get it ready for the community to come and enjoy it.
From what I remember as a child, as an infant, I've always gone to centers, I've always gone to communities, and I feel like the best word for a community is a family. It's a place where I feel at home, and it's a place where I can finally find myself in this world of ours. You see, like, not a lot of people know about the Shia community in America, and because of that, a community is a great way to solidify it. It's a great place to understand it. So I feel like that's what a community means. But it just, mere words can't describe community, because it's the feeling that you get when you're there, when you're amongst the people. That's why, for example, Jumu'ah prayers, why they're of such high value, because when you're there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees the community, He sees the unity in there. When you grow up in a diverse community, you kind of get perspectives from every single type of culture, background, and especially in America, you meet so many different people in here. People say that this is a melting pot. You know, you meet different faiths, different cultures, and I feel like in order to understand it, you first have to grow up in one, right? So I grew up in a place where you would smell the spiciness of biryani to the sweetness of kunafas, right? So you would just smell it, you would hear it, you would understand it, and you become more open-minded and more accepting of others.
Within Imam Ali Center, our main goal is, first and foremost, to unite the Shia community. That is our objective, that all the Shia community, despite their ethnicity, despite their background, despite their ethnicity, and despite their marja'iyya, who they follow, despite their political stand, we welcome all the Shia and all the Muslims. They are welcomed within Imam Ali Center. So that is very, very unique and about this center. And we see it in every Muharram and Ramadan, and throughout the year. We see simultaneously, we have Urdu program, Farsi program, Arabic program, and English program. It's very, very, very diverse. It doesn't belong to any one community or one ethnicity. The youth have a lot of positions and they're involved in every aspect of the center. We encourage them, we push them, and a lot of our programs are catered toward the youth. That is why English program since 2013-14 became our main program.
I came to the US about 10 years ago, so I had sort of a base of my upbringing was in Iraq and then in the UAE. But here, of course, was the biggest challenge, especially living out the teenage years and then the post-teenage years, the college years. You have temptations all over the place, so that is the biggest challenge. But coming to the center and surrounding yourself with this atmosphere was the biggest help that I could have had. And in addition to that, the youth sessions with Sheikh Mustafa were really like the spark that made me want to invest more time in religion, made me want to read more books on Islam, made me want to just study the religion more and more.
I started coming here when I was very young, about ages 3 plus. From what I can remember, I was introduced here when the communities were, I guess you can say, split apart, as in ethnically it was split apart. Afghans were in a certain section at the mosque at a certain time for a certain event. Iraqis were in another room. Pakistanis had another part of the hall. It gave me more of a holistic community, as in I saw kids from other backgrounds, Iraqis, Iranis, Pakistanis, still the same Afghans, but it was more rounded out. I think it's very important to grow up in a diverse community because it's very important to understand the different ideologies, cultures, and customs and ways of thought that other people from other backgrounds come from. Usually when you're surrounded by the people you've grown up with or people who are from the same place you were from, you have a certain view on things and you don't get the other side's point of view. And so it's important to be around and be with people from different backgrounds because you find a new understanding and I guess a new view on many different things, whether that be from religion, your life, you know, whatever it may be.
I came in a little later, probably in the early 2000s, when my family had moved to Virginia. We had also, been to other centers in the area, but my parents liked that some of the programs here would be in English. That was important for my family as I was a kid. What makes this place special is the people. One interesting thing is the diversity. I think it's been a real pleasure to have sitting next to each other like in one row, in one gathering, Lebanese, Afghan, Pakistani, Iraqi, Iranian, to have programs together and mixing up different elements from each culture into the programs.
I personally, I see it that beautifully we can be Shia American individual. The blessings that we have, it's to be the followers of Ahl Bayt alayhim salam and the culture of Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, to be very precise, to be complete, and to be the best culture one can have without any flaws in it. As American, we do have and we do participate in our rights as far as voting is concerned, as far as getting our voice to the government. And as a Shia, we are, alhamdulillah, able to practice all of our rituals within our Islamic center, within Imam Ali Center, without any problem, because we are abide by the law of the land, and the law of the land gives us the freedom of practicing our religion. I studied for 4 years in university. Everywhere I went, I was wearing this custom. I traveled all around the US, all Canada, Europe. Alhamdulillah, I didn't face any negative vibe from people. I remember the day after Charlie Hebdo's shooting that happened, I was coming back from LA I had a lecture in LA, coming back to Virginia. I had a stop in Chicago. I was in the airport. I have this is called saya. One of them, I have white color. Typically, I wear that white color when I travel, and with my turban, and I walk around in the airport. I get into the airplane, and an individual sat next to me, and he liked the way that I dressed, that I was dressing, and the line on my saya, and how neat and how presentable I was. And then he started a discussion about Islam and about my faith and what I believe and so on and so forth. It was a very, very friendly discussion.
Imam Hussein's journey is literally the inspiration for all of what I'm doing. His stand for justice, even though he was outnumbered, outmanned, that's sort of what I cling to every time to catch that kernel of hope, like I said. And knowing that, yes, in the immediate term, I might not be considered quote unquote the winner, but the legacy will hopefully live on, and future generations can hopefully say, oh, I know this guy who went into the policy world and he did something he built a path for me to go on. So that's the hope, and that all stems from Imam Hussein, his story, his mission, and ultimately his sacrifice.
I'd like to say that Imam Hussein inspires me in a way that actually a lot of my icons don't inspire me. A lot of my icons being, religiously, Imam Ali alayhi salam, obviously. But other than that, just people throughout the world, like I guess you could say Muhammad Ali, Cristiano Ronaldo, those are more like, I guess, living icons that I look up to. It's because when I look at Imam Hussein's message as a whole, I think every part of human decency, understanding, emotion, all of it was displayed that day or those days during Karbala. I don't know if you've experienced it ever, but when you're sitting in a room and everybody tells you you got something wrong or that they don't agree with you, you are very much inclined to just agree with everyone because everyone around you is saying that you're wrong. But in Imam Hussein's situation, he stood up against those people pushing that narrative against him, which was a narrative that could, I guess, ultimately you could say could end the religion of Islam. And he pushed against that, and not just with himself, but he put his family at stake, his companions at stake, and really everything he had to give. And that's why we remember him now for generations to come, and that's why he inspires me.
The story of his sacrifice, it never gets old to remind yourself about his trials and the trials of his family. When you think about the amount of patience and generosity he had, while he was in the most extreme of circumstances, it really makes a lot of the issues in my life, it makes them look like nothing, and then it makes it look like every time I've ever been impatient, or every time I've gotten angry, that's my reaction can always be a lot more controlled and tempered, and that I can always do my best to have better manners.
Imam Hussein, a lot of the times when you hear the word, your heart just rings at it, right? He can't be described with mere words. You have to look at his life in order to understand him. His passion towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his ability to be kind even to people who wronged him. He is the epitome of justice. He stood up even though the whole world went against him. That, when you think about it, it's so empowering as a Muslim individual who sees a lot of oppression going on around the world. Imam Hussein has influenced me to become the person who I am today, to stand up for justice, to be passionate, to be kind. He is the best of models as a father, as a son, as a sibling, as a spouse. And it's through all these different roles that he had, even before Karbala happened, that made me who I am.